What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show. As always, I like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. I was a 2018 Innovation Award winner given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. And remember, this is the home of Epic Conversations. I'm the host of Epic Conversations. You always know that I like to have new friends come on the Dr. Vibe Show. And we have another new friend tonight because I was doing some research and I saw an article on the internet. And if those who are a little bit older will remember the Arsenio Hall show, and I saw the title, I went, And then I read it and I went, let me reach out to this young man and find out a little bit more. So first things first, our new friend is Donnie Moreland Jr. He is a Minnesota-based mental health advocate and writer. He holds a master's degree in film studies from National University and a bachelor's degree in sociology from Prairie View A&M University. He has contributed to different publications or online publications such as Black Youth Project, Race Baiter, A Gathering of Tribes, and the Sage Group Publishing. He is going to be on the he is on right now. He's going to be on the Dr. Vibe Show tonight talking about an article he has just written. And I'm just going to see if I can pull it up for everyone here. The name of the article, as you can see if you're watching live or on the replay video-wise, is Many Black Men Protect White Women Because We See Ourselves in Them. I think we're going to have an interesting conversation tonight on this topic. So, welcome for the first time, but not the last time, Mr. Donnie Moreland. How are you, sir?
I'm pretty good.
Good. Well, thanks for taking the time out of your positive, productive schedule to share with us. I also want to shout out to people who are watching live on the Get Vocal platform. I'd like to say what is up to So Steph and what is up to Mr. Windsor, Ontario. Mr. Donnie, a little bit of an introduction there, but let's find out a little bit more about you. Where did you grow up, family life, etc.?
Well, originally I grew up in Maryland, Greenbelt, Maryland, to be more specific. I moved to Texas, more so Crosby, Baytown area, when I was around 11 or 12 with my folks. I grew up in Katy primarily while in Texas, the suburb outside of Houston. I went to college at a historically Black college, Prairie View University, as you mentioned. And from there, I moved to downtown Houston, around the Houston area a little bit before I found my way here in Minnesota, where I'm currently raising a family alongside my partner. So it's just kind of been a life of transition, to say the least. Family life has been good. I come from a family of creative people. My father is a photographer. He also owns this a process serving company, or at least is taking over as CEO of that company. My mother, she was actually working on her master's program in psychology at the moment, along with her MBA. She's worked in human resources for a long time as a director in different areas within that industry. She's also a prolific writer, leagues above myself. I've been trying to get her to publish herself, but we'll see how that goes. But yeah, that's essentially my family. No brothers and sisters, the only kid. So that's me in a nutshell.
So writing is in your genes, so to speak.
Yeah, you could say so. You could say so. I didn't used to be a fan of it as a practice, kind of growing up in school and high school. I was kind of forced to as part of a sociology program where you're doing a lot of, qualitative study analysis and things like that. And of course, working my way in film studies, it's nothing but, writing, academic writing and things like that. So kind of had to better my talents, to say the least.
Where did you get the drive for education from? Because in your bio, you've achieved a number of wonderful things education-wise. Where did that drive come from?
My mom, my mom. I was not a fan of school until college. She forced me to go. I was looking to become a
Oh,
Marine, but I tore my ACL and MCL playing sports in high school, so they were not looking to take me. And I had no plans, and she pretty much told me, "You're going to college. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's college." Um, and I had heard of Prairie View prior. I mean, I didn't know much about historically black colleges and institutions, but I heard about Prairie View. And growing up in a predominantly white suburb such as Katy, I was looking to kind of diversify my experience. So showing up there and uh, garnering relationships with my various mentors as of now really gave me a love for studying and analysis and critical thought and things like that, especially within the areas I write about. So it definitely comes from my mom, to answer the question.
okay, good stuff. A lot of education in two different disciplines. Why two different disciplines?
Um, well, originally it was psychology when I got to college. I was reading a lot of, Carl Jung as I think most impressionable minds, for instance, in psychology do. But I began speaking with a professor within the sociology department who became a mentor of mine about what sociology is and what it offers and what it can offer those who study it, and the many ways you can kind of navigate our social world in relationship to your advocacy or relationship to your research. It seemed really interesting, and I said, you know what, I think that's more me, so I'll give that a go. And in kind of studying sociology, I began to recognize um, with my love of film, because I've always loved film. My mom is a big film buff. How film and television and media in general has shaped, our social world. And I wanted to see and study more of how, you know, visual media, how much that imports on us and how much we import on the various industries within that medium of artistic expression. In many different ways, people express various things through visual media. Um, but I think more specifically, in studying film and studying black film and studying, black bodies, on screen, for which there's an extensive history, not just in America, but it's across the diaspora. You begin to understand like how we can utilize film as a means of memorialization and as a means of report, as a means of repair. I believe that film is really the next step for kind of discovering, how to both present our history, understand our history, and figure where we're going next, because it's such an expansive medium, and I think it is well worth the study. And I found out that it was.
Nice. Congratulations. That's good stuff. Uh, when did you start the writing bug, and what was your first article that was published?
It's kind of a weird story. Um, I began writing for a men's health
Oh,
magazine
know that
online.
magazine.
Well, not
Oh,
Men's Health, but a Men's
oh,
Health
okay.
magazine. Yeah,
I meant to.
yeah, no. Yeah, when I was like fresh out of high school, I was just looking for work, and there was a Men's Health magazine that was calling for writers, and I just put in I submitted a inquiry, and they thought I was appropriate to write for 45 to 65-year-old men, and I just began writing for their blog. But really, in college was when it kind of called me. My professor, he told me about some reference books that were looking for chapters, and he said he thought I'd be a good choice to write for them. I didn't know what he was thinking. It was like as a freshman writing for college textbooks. But I did it. I put in 100 pages worth of material, and I wrote one on Black Baptist leadership, another one on soil conservation. Just two different ends of the sociological spectrum in terms of study. But through the toil of writing those was, toil for a freshman. I fell in love with the practice, and then it really wasn't until this year when I kind of returned to, writing as as something to do, which is not so much, meditative or therapeutic or personal, just something that I could do to kind of like expand my portfolio. And I reached out to the editor for Black Youth Project because I was encouraged to do so by a friend of mine, Josie Pickens in Houston, who is a wonderful, not just educator, but theorist who works on studies of Black intimacy and love. She said I should submit a pitch, and I did, and I've been writing for them ever since, and been picking up other opportunities elsewhere. Writing for Steve Cannon, who recently passed away, but he's a giant kind of um, independent New York Black literature publication, working with Ismail Reed, and just art in general, being able to publish with A Gathering of the Tribes before he passed was just a huge accomplishment, kind of a lesson myself that, hey, I might be able to do this. So, yeah, I'm just kind of still on the train and seeing where the journey takes me.
Well, from those things like you mentioned you had written about in the past, what led you to write about this subject? Because, like I said, the title got my eyeballs immediately. What what was the impetus for you to write an article called "Maybe Black Men Protect White Women Because We See Ourselves in Them"?
Well, I mean, when it comes to the title, every editor chooses what they, best feel an article is about. I think that the title struck me too, but I think in a more positive way, it's like, oh, that's what she got from the paper. I'm excited to see people's responses. But I've been writing. Well, in Houston, I started a mental health support organization for Black men in Third Ward. It's called Lab. Say wonderful people in kind of facilitating what we offered as services. So we had group sessions, and we offered resources. I created an online forum for men. And I was reaching out for Black men specifically, but it was a lot of men who just kind of took a part to just talk about their issues of trauma and stress and things related to sexual abuse, things related to just the various topics that were being discussed around Me Too, as related to men, but then also just the lived experience of men. And so, I did that for about a year before I moved. And my first paper was about, well, not paper, but my first piece was about, privilege and the ways in which, as Black men, we express privilege, even in the unobserved, even in the subconscious. And, it just comes from in being a Black man with my experiences and in wanting to understand my relationship with my father and my grandfather and my proximity to other Black men and the things that, Black women, the things that Black women about in wonder, in a group capacity or whether it be in literature, Black. Look at all that and figuring out like what makes us, kind of what attributes these post-slavery subjects almost, kind of like post-slavery self-making for Black men, as we've kind of progressed since, not just emancipation, but our transmutation, across the Middle Passage. So, just wanting to understand in all aspects Black men, since I am one, and that is kind of the through line of all my work. But it's also about memorialization. Like that's something that's big with me. Like how do we memorialize not just those we lost, but our ethnic history and our experiences, our geographic history. Like how do we memorialize these things? Because erasure is very real, not just of people, but kind of erasure of identity, erasure of experience. That's a big thing for me because, we have a lot of stake, not just in America, but Black American man. So I speak about that, specifically. So, those Black men, and then, the memorialization of, Blackness, and how we're, want to define or discuss Blackness.
Okay. All right. I just want to shout out to Steph, who's watching us live on the Vocal platform. She lives in 3rd Ward in Houston.
Oh, nice. Shout out to Third War.
All right.
Yeah, there's a lot of work on Project Row Houses, and Ellis Bakery makes the best vegan cupcakes you've ever had in your life.
Good stuff. So when writing this article, what caused you to write this? I really want to find out why you wrote this article. Was it of personal experience? Was it the experiences shared by others to you? What gave you the impetus to write it?
Well, I think if you kind of what I've been writing about for the last few months now, it's just kind of been about our relationship with our proximity to patriarchy, or, you want to call it whiteness, we can call it whiteness. What is to privilege, what that proximity is to the things which we do have a relationship with, even if it's a relationship in contest, even if it's a relationship in opposition. So, I think I talked about, kind of Black male relationships, or the relationships of Black men, or cis heteronormative Black men with, Black transgendered women, and with queer homosexual Black men. It's just trickled down to white women because I was just really interested, given, if you look at the relationship that a lot of Black male entertainers in the States have to, characters such as Yes Jules or Iggy Azalea or others in a more non-sexual form, right? Like, not everything that exists between Black men and white women, or Black men and whiteness, is solely sexual. Nauseum about interracial relationships and about loving white women in a sexual capacity, or not loving, but, having a relationship with white women in a sexual capacity, or, sharing kind of romantic intimacies with white women. That's been written in nausea. I wanted to more so look at kind of what contributes and informs those relationships. What kind of contributes and informs, the non-sexual encounters, that do exist, because there is something there. And so I just decided to try to unpack it, in the ways that I do, looking at history, and looking at, kind of the modern examples of less platonic relationships, but I'll call them non-sexual relationships. Relationships just between two parties that share something, and it's about, like, what exactly do they share, right? And in relation to, and less privilege, right? But the performance of privilege, especially for us. So it really was that, right? It's not, about character, person, or like being white women. Not saying Black men are white women. That's not what I'm saying. It's an inquiry into what is the relationship that we have, that proximal relationship with respects to privilege, and how can that hurt us? Because it has, right? It has hurt. And I kind of talk about that a little bit with my own tangential experience. A kind of wholly vapid environment in Katy, Texas. And so my own experiences of others who have this idea about Blackness kind of important to them in these environments where Blackness is not something that is seen, and the relationship to whiteness and the people that perform whiteness is very strange. It's a very strange relationship. So it's really looking at that, like the root of that, and trying to figure out what it is. And also, I'm not the first person to ask the question. I bring up Al Hilton's book, White Girl, which is a huge, I think, kind of influence on the piece. And it really is me asking the question that he asks, and less about queer Black men, but about cis heteronormative Black men. Like what happens when you turn this inside out? What exists, right? What is our proximal relationship to privilege? What is our proximal relationship to the performance of privilege? What is our proximal whiteness? That's perspective on that spectrum of maleness or Black maleness.
Excellent. Now, as we go further into the article itself, how much of your personal experience now, and it's up to you if you want to share this, did you date white women in the past, and did you experience what the title of the article?
For me, you know, there was one young woman in high school that I had like an intimate relationship with, but it was more about how I saw white women and why I saw them the way I did. It's something to kind of, in some instances, it's kind of it's the traditional like claiming his trophy, right? My friend likes to call it like the search for reparatory sex or reparatory relationship, just like using white women as a type of reparatory justice, given their kind of relationship to white men, right? Like a part of it is that, but then there's another thing of feeling more comfortable around them as I don't want to say friends, but as affiliates that I do, Black women who I engaged with, right? That I did, women of color that I engaged with. Like there was a comfortability there that, in hindsight, is very strange. It's a very strange thing to me in hindsight, especially in kind of looking at at the social environment of Katie is shaped, and kind of again that it being a culturally vapid, you know, um, community, it was just a very strange thing to me. Like that comfort, it was weird, right? In hindsight, so I wanted to understand that for myself. Like, what is that? Why do I, why is there that comfort there? Can I? My daughter is crying. Can I have a few moments?
Yeah, you can certainly come back, go to your daughter, and we'll stay on live here.
All right, perfect. Thank you. You're right.
So Donnie is just going to attend to his crying daughter, and that's more important than any Dr. Vibe show. And so Steph, I know that you will have some questions, or in regards to the comments that Donnie is sharing here. So when he does come back, I do want to get him to expand on some comments from the article.
Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that.
No worries. Daddy duty is more important than anything we got going on.
Yeah.
No problem. Well,
We wanted to be a part.
no problem. We'll sort of keep it short here because to me that's more important than any conversation. So um, let's get back to the conversation where we left off in regards to how much, if anything, your personal experience had to do with this article.
Mm. I think I left off. I was discussing, that comfort and want to know that comfort is, and then realizing that I wasn't only one. Like you go to HBCU, and you're going to have experiences with, you know, so many different types of black people, black men, and realizing, okay, this wasn't my sole experience. At the time, you don't think anything of it, right? But in me kind of doing the the work that I do and kind of looking to, unpack what black maleness is, what makes us, what contributes to us, what's important on us, what we important on others. I was looking to kind of to observe what that was, and ask the question of what that was. More so, asking questions about what was that.
Okay.
What could that have been?
Excellent. I just want you to expand on one of the quotes in the article. You're saying what white women mean to us as black men based on what it is to mean to ourselves in proximity to whiteness. Can you expand on that comment?
Yeah. So I think that, like, when we talk about race, we talk about kind of our relationship with race. I think it comes across very objective, very universal. Um, like, this is just how things are. This is just how black men are. Just how black women are. Just how white women are. Just how white men are. But in Christina Sharp talks about this a lot in her work. Um, you know, type of like post-slavery self-making, like race as performance. And she's not the only one. Like, this isn't an original concept, but it's like the performances that each of us undertake as part of a race, and how those performances, how they influence others who are also performing. And so for me, it's a question of, within the performance of race, within the performance of kind of like of blackness along with maleness. If we're looking at what contributes to the performance of whiteness, we're talking about privilege, right? We're talking about the various modes of privilege as it exists, and like our relationship to that privilege, kind of on a scale. Like, I'm not, the old saying, kind of black women are, or black men are above black women, but below white men. Well, my question is, where are white women in that conversation? And then if I'm looking at the performance of race, but then also the performance of privilege, they're closer to us than I think we recognize. And so when I'm thinking about, okay, these performances of race and who can and can't express certain types of privileges in certain types of spaces, um, you find that there are interesting relationships that people have in proximity to each other. Even in opposition, there are still these interesting relationships that we do have in our performances of race, not just the performance of race, but how our performance kind of influences others' performance of race. That's not suggesting that, and this is what I say at the end of the piece, is that, regardless of what we may, regardless of what our racial performance is and what we kind of assume about our privilege, and even if that performance, the privilege is shared with white women, we're still without that privilege. We're still without the ability to express that privilege without opposition. And so it is dangerous to kind of engage in that not that proximal relationship, but it's dangerous to engage in thinking about white women in a way we may subconsciously, and associating in a way we may subconsciously, because even if we find comfort there, even if we find sameness there, there's still danger there, right? There's still it's like Schrodinger's cat experiment almost, like in not observing what our relationship is to the violence that is possible in our associations, we become more susceptible to violence just by association. So it's a call for us to be careful, but it's more of a call for us to ask, well, why do we need to be careful? And for what reasons that's what reasons, but why might our subconscious associations, why might our kind of proximal relationships, why might these proximal racial performances, why might we inquire about them, observe them more carefully? Because if we don't, then I think, as we've seen, there are negative and sometimes, dangerous implications.
One of the things I find fascinating too about your article is you talk about at least the on-screen relationship between Martha Stewart and Snoop Dogg. And for those who don't know, I don't know if they're still doing, but there was a period of time they were hosting a cooking show on the Food Channel or Food
Yeah.
And I thought that quite interesting. Can you elaborate on that and share that with our audience, how that relationship fits in with your article?
Yeah. So, I think, of course, whenever you're, the article is, it is written in a form which is theoretical, but there needs to be some type of pragmatic implication, some type of pragmatic example. And I think I'm a huge hip hop fan, so if you pay attention to hip hop, you know who Tekashi 6ix9ine is. You know what's happening with him, and his recent events in New York with NYPD and all of that. And I just ran across an Instagram post from Snoop Dogg about celebrating Martha Stewart in contrast to Tekashi 6ix9ine's kind of his confessions in court, and saying how we should celebrate Martha Stewart for for her display of strength, like going through the legal system and not snitching, so to speak, doing her time. And it was just kind of weird to me because, I think here's this person who has kind of made a career off of the sexual exploitation of Black women. He's a part of the I think somebody call it the superheroization of pimp culture. And the women who have kind of been subject to that have been Black women explicitly. But if you look at, if we're talking about like women in the prison industrial complex, women who are being imprisoned at, a disproportionate rate, even compared to us, you're talking about Black women, you're talking about Black and brown women, but you're especially talking about Black. If we're about putting it down, so why aren't we saying anything about Black women who are currently going through the legal system with assistance, without support, and doing egregious amounts of time for, crimes which in a state shouldn't be crimes. There's that example I bring up of the woman whose name I can't think of right now, who shot, a warning shot in her ceiling to, alert her husband that he or ex that he needs to leave because he was threatening violence. I believe he's still doing time for that. And so when I think about like his celebration of her, his continued celebration of her, it's been a continued celebration of Martha Stewart, recognizing Martha Stewart in a non-sexual capacity. but then also think about like his relationship to Black womanhood and what that represents, what that's at least represented in his music, insofar as the expression of his social world. There's this there's this division there. There's this division that I wanted to understand a little bit more. It's like, okay, so why is it Martha Stewart and not these Black women, especially if you've used quite literally the bodies of Black women to sell music. And then I think about what they have in common, right? And it's like you look at Dogg's, he was fighting that murder charge in the early '90s. While part of Death Row Records. The performance of privilege. Like, does he have real privilege? No, but it's the performance of privilege, right? Through Suge Knight and through Death Row Records, that he's able to beat that charge, right? And that puts him in proximity to actual privilege, which there are certain parties who can't express. Martha Stewart, she performed a white collar crime, but that white collar crime has landed a lot longer than the sentence that she received, which was a minimal sentence for what was it? I don't have the article in front of me, but it was a minimal sentence for that type of crime. And I think, well, what is it that is between the two? And I look at it and it's like, she has actual privilege, and it's the privilege of her white womanhood, right? It's the privilege of her whiteness, but then also her white womanhood. He has the ability to perform privilege, right? The socio-political privileges we do not have, but he has the ability to perform it insofar as he has the money to do so, the power to do so. So what is the relationship there? What does he see with her that allows him to say, this is someone to celebrate, but they are not? And you come back to that privilege that he can perform, that privilege that she, right? And so in considering that, I'm thinking like that is not something which is isolated, right? I think that in kind of a lot of exercises sorry about that. In the exercises of performing privilege and one associate with type of power, whether it be a type of class, type of standard of existence, it is very easy to find comfort in other parties who actually can, right? And very difficult to associate with parties who cannot. And so, no matter what, it's kind of like Ta-Nehisi Coates when he wrote about Kanye West and how, when it comes to like Black celebrities, especially Black male celebrity, there's this kind of this ascension to Black godliness, but Black godliness is just whiteness, right? It's just the search for a type of social merit that equates solely to patriarchy, that equates solely to a type of whiteness that we can't reach, we cannot attain, we have not claimed the ability to do so, but we can perform as such. And so it really is looking at that. Like, what was that relationship, and why did it exist? What contributed to that relationship for it to exist?
Okay, let's get it going. Let's get it going. Some more stuff, because I don't want to. I know you got duties, so I don't want to keep you on for too much longer.
I gotta get her back to sleep.
No problem. So just as we start winding down here, what has been the reaction to this article?
A lot of frustration, which
I can imagine.
But a lot of DMs, direct messages, specifically from Black women, like expressing, "I've had this thought for a long time. This is the work that I wish people talked about more." And so it's very strange, how I don't want to say strange. I think it's telling that the reactions I get from even in my close circle of friends, the reactions I get from, Black men about the article, is of hostility and um,
What's the hostility based on?
well, I think it's I think, and I think when we talk about the performance, this kind of plays a role. When we discuss privilege, we discuss maleness, Black maleness, and associations with privilege. Nobody wants to think that they are a part of a system which contributes to so much harm, right? Nobody wants to believe that there's a possibility that I may not be what, if we're looking at privilege and the performance of privilege, what I may be in that relationship, in that respect, in that regard. And so, the minute you say, of course, there's the like, oh, he's calling me a white woman, so X, Y, and Z, right? That's the first reaction. The second reaction is, okay, I don't believe this because, we look, people have accepted the mimetic theory. Well, I'm not having a conversation about the mimetic theory, I'm having a conversation about, the performance of privilege. So there's that, and then there's all of, I'm not that. You don't call me that, right? Which is more character driven. It's more character based. Not having a conversation about anyone's character. Is how we perform, is how we perform Black maleness, and what that exists in proximity of, relationship to privilege, because we do perform. Do perform it just by way of the rules of patriarchy. What did James Baldwin say to Nikki Giovanni in their soul conversation? He said, you're born, and the civilization by which you live that surrounds you. But as you grow up, as you become, he says, a man, so to speak, it becomes of you, right? And being a man in this particular society comes messages about, about gender roles. We're having conversation about, gender norms, and we fit into that conversation regardless of what we may think, but we have to have a conversation about how we fit. And this is me saying, okay, we're having that general conversation, but we still have to have a conversation about ourselves as kind of a new ethnicity within this structure, right? Because things break down more than just men and women. Things break down more than just, the elementary forms by which we understand gender relationships, right? There's also Black men, Black women. There's Black trans women and Black queer men. There's a spectrum of relationships that we should observe because we interact with them all the time. And if we don't ask questions about them, then the conversations that we should be having about, if you want to call it social progression, we can't really have, because we're not having a conversation about what it is that contributes to our making, right? So, the hostility, I completely understand. I don't have issue with it, but for me, as long as it's getting people to ask questions about not who they are, because that's not the conversation. It's not who you are, your character. It's about what you are, what makes you. Like, that is, if people are asking that question, then I feel I'm doing my job. Of course, this is not the last time that we're gonna kind of have the conversation. I'm going to go back to this concept, and this concept kind of, again, it's a through line throughout my work, right? This, what makes Black maleness, what makes Black men. And so, I'm going to revisit it. And, insofar as Black Youth Project has opened up their, interest in articles in response to my own, is giving people opportunity to explore for themselves. What makes you, right? If you don't agree with me, and you don't have to, that's fine. But if you believe something that is in contrast to what I believe, and you feel strongly about it, well, there's space to say something, because we need to have a conversation. We do. We have to have a conversation. It's not just one conversation. It's an array of conversations surrounding Black maleness, surrounding the things which contribute to those ideas.
Okay. Well, we're gonna let you go because I see you got baby 2D. But
Yeah.
just some final closing comments in regards to this article. I guess based on this article and the feedback you have gotten, what is your message to Black women? Actually, no. What's your message first to white women? Then what's your message to Black women? And then what's your message to Black men when it comes to this subject?
Um, I think
Okay.
I think that's her response. But I think for me, for everyone, it's just asking, kind of what has contributed to you. Like, what are you? Less who are you, but what are you? Because we all interact with each other on a daily basis. And I feel like if we're going to if the conversation we're having right now is about social progression, then we have to have the conversation about, well, how do we get here as a society? My role as a Black man is to talk about Black men. That's because I come from that lens. Um, White women have to have their own conversation. It's like Black women have to have their own conversation. I'm not the person to speak up for Black women. That's overstepping my boundaries. Um, and so I think for everyone, it's just asking and inquiring about what you are, because it's only when we do that that we begin to reclaim certain ideas and definitions. We begin to have a conversation about changing things about ourselves to fit how it is we want to not just engage one another, but engage as part of community, engage as, Black men with other Black men, Black men with Black women, Black men with white women. We have the ability, if we ask these questions, to understand, how it is we want to kind of reclaim, redefine, restructure. But if we don't have a conversation and we just kind of, are less comfortable, but if we're complacent with how it is we're defined, then you run into a lot of the dysfunction that we have within kind of our social cast, and people, feeling, the kind of misanthropy, and people feeling the frustration, people feeling, confused about what it is they are, confused about their Blackness, their Black experience, feeling as though, I don't even know what it means to be Black. We have that conversation, it seems like every decade. What is Blackness? Does Blackness even exist? It's only because we don't, ask the questions of what contributes to our existence now, what contributes to our existence since we, since our ancestors made that traversal across the Middle Passage. It's only when we don't ask those questions that we kind of exist in that ball of confusion. And so, that's kind of my aim, is just to get everyone to think, like, how do we arrive here? Like, how do we arrive here to this place in which we're standing in right now?
So, and I know you're bringing up some things I want to make sure you address before you leave, and I know you have to leave sooner rather than later. Then, do these conversations not only have to happen within the Black community, but do they also have to happen between whites and Blacks?
I think there are different conversations that everyone needs to have. I feel like there's certain conversations of reparation that need to happen between Black folk and white folk. That's for certain, right? There are conversations less about reconciliation but reparation. There are conversations about truth and about accountability, which should happen between white folk and Black folk, and more so one party as compared to the other. Like, our conversation with white folk, I feel like, is more about, us receiving restitution and reparation for the things that we've experienced, not just in macro form, but micro form as well, because, microaggressions are very real and they're very measurable and they're very affecting and they're part of the legacy. But only when you kind of address what you are and the privileges that you assume in what you are, and the performance of whiteness, can you come to an understanding of, wait, I do have a role to play in this. For Black folk, I think it's a conversation about, about what we're having. Like, the article is not about it is not to include, white women per se. It's about Black men. It's more about how do we understanding of ourselves that is honest, that allows us to have a conversation about accountability within community, that allows us to have a conversation about truth within community, that allows us to have a conversation about repair within community. So there are different conversations that everyone needs to have, but yes, we all have to have the conversation about how we arrived to this place.
Okay. Well, on that last comment, we're going to let you go. I'd like to say thank you for taking time out of your duties.
Thank you. I appreciate the break.
No problem. If people want to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
You can find me on Instagram at dmoreland1993, and on Twitter at actually, let me look that up now because I'm rarely on Twitter.
Well, but, I can tell you it's and it's Donnie DONNIE _Moreland MORELAND.
Yes, and if you look, because I'm really online, primarily promote my work and the work of other great Black writers that kind of write a part of these publications that contribute to Black Youth Project, Race Baiter, the Gathering of the Tribes, and a host of others that produce work that we should read. We should take part in the conversations that so many Black writers are having right now, that kind of require us to be a part of. So yeah, if you want to kind of engage with my work, I would say Black Youth Project and Race Baiter is where you'll see me most active, kind of online. I just want to see baby pictures that you'll see all you want to.
That's good stuff. All right. I am Dr. Vibe, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, the home of Epic Conversations. I'm the host of Epic Conversations 2018 award winner for innovation given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. If you want to find out more information about myself, best place to go is to my website, VIBESHOW.com. I'd like to thank people who came in during this epic conversation. We have Steph, we have Bobby, Melvin Lars also came in on the Get Vocal platform. Also, Dr. Tachi, who hosts the Livus online stream about media, tech, and pops culture. It's called Mediascope. It's on Wednesday evenings, 5 p.m. Eastern Time on Instagram Live, and then 6 p.m. Eastern Time on Periscope and Facebook Live. And she is scheduled to come back on the Dr. Vibe Show with Leah Miller, otherwise known as Encyclopedia Brown, Leah Miller in Armenia, this coming Monday evening, which I believe is, yes, October 28th at 10 p.m. So we're speaking at that. We'll have them back on. They are collectively known as Black Lady Magic. As always, I like to end out my conversations with live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Sometimes you have to get small to get stronger. Block assumptions and aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, aim wider. One other thing I want to shout out also to, and I can't forget this young lady's name, Serena Wills. Thank you for your support as always. God bless, peace be well, keep the faith, and walk good. Good night, everybody.